All right, so let's go straight into this, okay? The topic here is how to navigate future polycrisis with an anti-fragile mind. So I already mentioned earlier on all the reasons why I felt this was apt. But this concept about anti-fragility. Dr. Charlotte, you're also there, and we also have our speaker who's here with us, Monfik. This concept, while I was preparing, I was a bit curious. What's anti-fragility? What does this whole concept mean? And one thing I found was that it was actually a term coined by a gentleman called Nassim Nicholas Taleb. And he wrote a piece or a book about fragile, anti-fragile, and then he had a colon. It's things that gain from disorder. So this is going to be quite interesting. Things that gain from disorder. So I would like to start by asking this question. It's one thing to live and another thing to live your life in a way that is anti-fragile. In fact, the concept of anti-fragility says that whereas while fragile things break under stress and resilient things simply withstand it, anti-fragile things thrive and they improve as a result of stress and uncertainty. So I want to start with you, Monfik, because you were in the room when Lady Bimbo was speaking and the last panel. And there's this balance about, I think she was saying, look, if you have to travel and go through so much stress to get to work and all of those things, move closer, okay? So that you can live better and healthier. Now, this concept of anti-fragility kind of, if you will forgive me, contradicts that a bit. Because it's saying that there are systems where, there's stress, there's uncertainty, there's all of this pressure, a word that we've used a lot today. But then it's saying it thrives. So an anti-fragile mind or an anti-fragile thing would thrive under stress, under strain. So I'd like you to help us reconcile this. And Dr. Richard, I'm coming to you, and then I'll go to Charlotte as well. How do we reconcile this? Because we need to create that balance. I'm sure, yes, the healthier side to living is very important, and we've heard a lot of that. But when we now bring this concept of anti-fragility, how do we create the balance?
Good evening, everybody. Thank you guys for staying this late. I'm very grateful to be here. Thank you, Steph, for organizing this. So to answer your question, I believe that there are two things human beings don't know that they have. All of us have it, but the key thing is, do we realize that we have it? The capacity to endure pain is one of them. The capacity to stay resilient, no matter how hard and difficult things get. That's one thing. The second thing is, we don't know the level of potential that we have. And it's unfortunate, a lot of people go through life, because of pain, they stay stagnated. Then also, because of that same pain, they don't optimize their potential. So when I look at anti-fragility, in fact, true confession, I hadn't heard the word until Steph sent me the topic. It's a new terminology. It just came like 2 years ago.
You're not alone.
Very new. Polycrisis also came last year. Very new concepts. So since the pandemic, people have been looking for ways to thrive through turbulence or to thrive through trauma. When a terrible thing happens, how do you conquer it? Unexpected things, uncertainty, how do you conquer it? So I feel the first thing is to reframe your negative thoughts into your positive thoughts. The average human being has about 67,000 thoughts in a day. 67,000 thoughts we have bubbling in our head every single day. 70% of those thoughts are negative. So you see, we are on this journey of trying to constantly fight the negativity that happens just in our head. Then in Nigeria, before you even step out of your room, is one negative thing after the other. Then when you step outside, oh my God. Then when you turn on the TV, forget it. It's terrible. So the first thing is, how do you reframe? So I have a formula that I teach my clients because I help them to move from a place of adversity into a place of audacity. Then we reframe the word adversity by reframing each letter of what adversity represents. So A, I feel that when a negative thing happens, for you to develop an anti-fragile mind, you need to take it as the impetus to take action towards the next best thing that will move the needle. You don't stay stagnated, because momentum helps you to get over a tough situation. I'm a Muslim. One of the verses of the Quran I stumbled upon the day of the worst tragedy of my life, the very worst of it. Just turned 19. In fact, I was 18 years old. I was taking a walk with my mom. We were going to buy honey in my village, Agbede, in Edo State. I don't know, those are in Edo State, from Edo State here in Nigeria. So we're going to buy honey in the village, and this woman just kept admonishing me. She was just telling me the things that she wants me to correct in my personality. I was just 18 years old. She was trying to tell me, oh, you need to be more confident. I was so shy, so timid. I'm a firstborn. She thought I was too fragile, that I would amount to nothing in this world. So she was so worried. So she spent almost an hour walk with me, admonishing, trying to tell me, be stronger, be bolder, basically be anti-fragile. 2 hours later, this woman had stroke. Our entire left side got paralyzed. Less than 2 hours later. And I never saw her the same again. She died. She was only 37 years old. So we were in hospital for 2 months. I had to bathe, I had to clean her, do all the things. She was bedridden, couldn't move. And she did not make it. That's when developing anti-fragility started for me. So I think I'll go into more about it. But that adversity into audacity, A, should help you, give you the impetus to take action. D, let the terrible situation you are facing make you have more drive and determination. Don't let it make you give up. You know, forever I said, give up, you are even losing out because you are now wasting time. You know, that joke really got me, you know. Let that adversity you're going through enable you to have that drive and determination to keep surviving. If nothing else, to shut up the naysayers, right? Because some people today are shocked at who Monfik is. Because if you know my beginnings, very humble beginnings, it's amazing. I am shocked that I'm sitting here today. The next alphabet, ADV, V, help you to find your voice. Let adversity help you find your voice. Because if you stay voiceless, it's going to beat you down and you will not be able to survive it. Then E, let it give you endurance. Let it enable you to find that thing within you to be able to cope when the things get harder. Because you think you've seen something. I thought my mother dying was the worst thing. The last 3 years, I've been going through like this horrible adversity that is so multi-layered. I'm still in it, believe it or not. So I'm yet to even be able to, I like one of the speakers that told us, I think it was you, said you need to heal before you share it. I've not even recovered, talk less of healing. So I'm still there. I thought my mother's death was the worst thing. So let it help you find your endurance in you. Our resilience, building your resilience. That's why we are all here. I don't need to overflog that. The S, thank you, helps you to build your strength. Who will help me with I? Let me make this a bit participative. I, it gives you insight. It enables you to have more insight, and with insight comes wisdom. T, it enables you to have tenacity. What's the next alphabet? Y. It makes you yearn for more. Let your adversity make you yearn. I think when you look at that formula, it will help you to develop an anti-fragile mind.
Can we put our hands together one more time for Monfik? Thank you so much for that. Now, you've talked about reframing, and you gave us the adversity. And please, can we put our hands together one more time? Because I don't think anyone in the room ever looked at adversity that way, picking each letter and then changing the meaning, right? So I think that's something for us to take note of. Now, many believe that decision making should be decentralized to make organizations less prone to crisis. Okay? Now, is this a fireproof way, in your opinion? Is this a fireproof way of managing a crisis? Decentralizing the decision-making process. Is that a fireproof way of managing a crisis?
Thank you for the question. I would say yes, and I will also say no. And the reason is this. Most organizations fail to solicit employee feedback when they are making decisions. Because I worked in the banking industry for 13 years. I know how toxic some organizations can be in terms of staff welfare, in terms of the office politics and all the things. So when they want to make decisions, sometimes they don't solicit employee feedback. So that causes a gap. So if that can be addressed, the answer will now be yes, they don't need to decentralize it. They can still centralize it as long as they request for employee feedback. So employees feel that they have a stake in the decision-making process because it will reduce the conflict. Because if they decentralize it, what in my opinion would happen is that everybody would just be their own bosses and they'll be doing things the way they want to do it arbitrarily, and that also will cause conflict and it will also increase the crisis level. So I believe that if they decide to solicit employee feedback, that would enable them to not need to decentralize. They can still centralize it, but they make turnaround time also faster. That's my answer.
All right, thank you. Can we put our hands together one more time? So because of the work you've done extensively with corporate organizations, especially leadership teams, what strategies or what qualities should effective leaders exhibit when guiding their people through crisis? What qualities should they exhibit when guiding their people through crisis moments?
Yes, no, thank you so much. And again, thanks to Steph and the leadership team for having me here today. I know it takes a village to pull this off successfully, so a huge kudos to the team. So going to your question, I've had the opportunity of being in the highest leadership tables, listening to conversations, having to implement some certain things, but to keep it short because of our time, one of the things I've seen being at the receiving end is something I'll call the 5 C's. It's very easy when you are being disrupted. When Uber and Lyft disrupted the taxi industry, Uber and Lyft were smiling, right? The taxi industry folks were not smiling. So when you are the taxi folks, when you're at the other side, and a lot of the great speakers have said today as well, some of these things, you cannot plan for them. Some of them, you cannot predict them. So how does the leadership carry people along? And why is this important? John Maxwell said something. He said, if you're a leader and there's no one following you, you're just taking a walk. And also, if you're on an organization whereby a lot of the people are just there for the paycheck, during the time of crisis, people are not going to stay. Let's look at Ukraine. Let's look at the president, Zelensky. Remember, Zelensky was a comedian who ultimately became a president. But what if you think of that country today, a lot of people are fighting not for the president. They are fighting for the future of their country. They are fighting for the future of democracy. So the number one thing any solid leadership team has to do, you have to establish a sense of purpose. Why does my organization exist? What problem are we trying to solve in the world? What is our vision? And as an employee, how does your vision and our organization vision, how does it align to that? Like a particular lady was saying something that earlier on, one of the speakers or the moderator, she said she has a privilege of doing something that she loves. When you have an organization or company that people align to the vision and mission, during tough times, they are going to stay. So that's number one. Number two is great leaders always have to educate their people in terms of the complex times that we're going through. I just mentioned the case of Uber and the taxi industry. As a leader, you always have to let your people know these are disruptive times. You disrupt or you are disrupted. Why is that important? Because when your organization, when employees know that if I'm not doing something that is valuable, if I'm not doing work that is meaningful for now and for the future, there's a possibility that the business dies like Kodak, or somebody is going to take us over. So once your employees understand that, then what do they begin to do? They begin to think like owners, because I don't want to lose the work that I love. I don't want to lose my paycheck. So they begin to contribute. They have an owner mindset. So that's why it's important. The other C that is extremely critical, I don't want to mention names because I don't know Stephanie's relationship with this company, so I don't want to put UR3 on a different, but we've heard of some companies recently in the news, Google it, whereby employees are finding out that they got fired through email. These people have been in these companies for 10, 15, 20 years, and the only way I got fired was through email, or I went to work and my badge card didn't work. So when we talk in terms of leaders who are able to carry the whole organization along, the first thing is you have to be able to connect with your people. You have to be able to have empathy. That would I want somebody to do this to my daughter? Will I want someone to do this to my son? Is this how I want to be treated? The second thing in terms of connection as well is I was in a particular organization at Intel that was going through a difficult time, and that business ultimately had to shut down. But what the leader did in the background, this leader got the organization 80% of those people, he got them other homes. While this leader had had a change was coming, something bad was going to happen, 80%. And I'm told the reason why it was not even 100 was some people just decided to take the offer and just leave. So that connection point, extremely important. The other thing is culture. Every organization has purpose, mission, and vision. Your culture comes to life during difficult times. What culture are you espousing? Is the CEO getting 30, 40% increase while some people are having layoffs? Culture, extremely important. The other thing that is important, and this, people talk about communication, but I want to talk, psychologists did something is called TSA, transactional analysis. And what transactional analysis means is that when you are having communications with people, there are different ways you can do this. Think of an adult, right? Think of a parent, think of the adult, and think of the child. Typically, as adults, you want to have an adult-adult conversation. But what tends to happen is that during difficult times, leaders tend to act like parents. And what they want to do is that they want to shield and protect people from the bad news so they can focus. But when the employees start getting wind that something is happening, the employees are not happy, right? Because I'm not your child. Like, if something is happening, why aren't you having that conversation with me? So what does that lead to? It breaks trust. So when leaders begin to understand that something is coming, there are three things they should do. Tell your employees what you know. Tell your employees what you do not know. Tell your employees what you know, but you cannot share yet. What that does is that people will respect your leadership team. And the last thing again is, I'm going to talk about is community. One of the things we know is that during cold times, sheep come together and they survive, but cows, because they're isolated during cold, they die. You cannot live a meaningful life in isolation. I lived my life till in my 20s before I left Nigeria. I also know there's the Nigerian factor. There's a proverb that says in Yoruba, "Peti issue in Yoruba, jino in your man forward bone." So that if your yam is ready, you use your hand to cover it because you don't want people to be throwing flies or envy. So, but again, I think one of the speakers said, whether it's a family member, whether it's a pastor, whether it's a professional, a meaningful life cannot be lived in isolation. So I think I'll stop there for now.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Osinbajo. Thank you very much. So communication, so key. Tell them what you know, what you don't know, and what you know but you can't disclose. I'm going to come to you now, Charlotte, the futurist. You are a futurist. You speak publicly. I guess you also have, or you've had the opportunity to speak at length on this particular subject. Now, you know, when Doctor was speaking, he said something about people fighting for the future. And you hear a lot of times people saying, look, well, nobody knows what tomorrow holds. Nobody knows what tomorrow brings, okay? Now, fragile systems they hate mistakes. When we think about anti-fragile as a concept, the fragile systems hate mistakes because they carry so much potential for danger, right? Now, on the other hand, anti-fragile systems, however, they love mistakes, right? Because it's an opportunity to advance. Now, can you share any personal experience, just briefly, of a crisis or challenge that an anti-fragile mindset contributed to helping you navigate? Any personal experience, just briefly, that an anti-fragile mindset helped you navigate?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'll take the quick opportunity to thank you for the invitation to speak. I have been in Nigeria before twice. Really enjoyed it, and I'd love to come back in person. So we'll aim for that maybe next year. But in terms of an example in terms of anti-fragility, and I know some of these words are very new. I think I'm responsible for introducing the polycrisis to this conversation because I wrote a book which I've given to Steph to be able to pass on to you about dealing with future shock and polycrisis and where we are in between that, and how do we face the future. For me, one of the most startling realizations about this kind of anti-fragility, or how we think about the future, came from a leadership position. I was involved in the leadership team of our local, here in Southern Africa, our speaker association. And I was very passionate about the association, very passionate about the members, very passionate about things that were happening. And sometimes my passion and eagerness kind of overwhelmed my colleagues who were in the leadership team. And I was so demanding of things that had to happen, and things we could not tolerate the things that were wrong. That kind of behavior was wrong, and we had to be eliminated, and that we could not accept. And my language was very aggressive. And even when I look back on it, I feel like, oh, that's like really uncomfortable. I really admire my colleagues for having put up with me during my over-enthusiastic phase. When I then had the opportunity to step into other leadership positions, and I don't want to say like at a higher level, but at a broader level, when I got involved in the Global Speakers Federation, and I started talking to colleagues and associations around the world, I started seeing something quite interesting, in that the problems that we have, other people have. And so we're not unique, we're not special. This is not like a precious thing that we have, because everybody has the problem, the challenge, the ideas, the passion, the interest, the ambitions. So we're not unique and special, but at the same time, because of our different cultures and contexts, we deal with things in different ways. So we can learn from each other. So the minute I got that global perspective of what my colleagues around the world were experiencing, when I came back to my home association, it was with a calmer mindset. The whole thing about anti-fragility is when things are fragile, they will break, they will snap, it will be broken. When things are anti-fragile, there's movement. It's a dance. We were talking about dance and movement earlier. It's a movement. We respond, and sometimes things don't go our way, but we can step back, and then we can influence, and we can remind people of our purpose, and we can encourage and build relationships and networks. And that is how we move forward without being fragile. So whether it is, a physical system, whether it is a hierarchy in the workplace, whether it's relationships, whether it is our brand and what kind of work we put out there, when we are fragile, we risk breaking something. And when you break something, you put it back together, you can still see where the glue is, you still see where the break is. But when we're anti-fragile, we can actually create something quite amazing. And that, for me, would be the example that I would pass on, that we have this better perspective, and we engage with people, and we be a little bit more graceful, and offer other people the opportunity to not always be doing things at the same passionate level that we're doing. That would be my example. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Can we put our hands together for Charlotte for that? Okay, we should be malleable, brittle. That's what I take. Is that good enough? We should be brittle enough to adapt. So whilst fragile people or fragile things will break, we could adopt a brittle mindset or approach and leverage the support. And I think everything you've said, Charlotte, you've talked about community. Dr. Richard also talked about community. And I think when you spoke as well, Mofif, you talked about community as well. So one thing that resonates with everyone, or that's common through all the speakers today, is the community. So one key way that you could build an anti-fragile mindset, essentially, when dealing with polycrisis, irrespective of wherever you are in the world, is leveraging communities. Is that a safe way to conclude this? So I have just, this is the final, this is a speed question for all the speakers. Dr. Richard, you have your hand up.
Yeah, so community, and I would also say courage. And the reason I said so is that when you were speaking, when Charlotte was speaking, something came to my mind. When you drop an egg on your kitchen floor, on the floor, the egg is going to break. But when you drop a tennis ball, it's going to bounce. So that really goes to courage and your mindset. So community is important, yes, but that mindset and that courage of bouncing back up. So yeah, because of our time, I'll just skip right there.
All right, thank you so much. So community, courage. There's so much uncertainties we're dealing with now when we look at the world we live in today. So I'm just going to go very quickly through everyone. I was going to say what's the one word, but what do you think anyone in the room or watching online, one thing they could do, one thing they could start doing to prepare for potential crisis, to position for potential crisis in the future? I will start with the futurist, Charlotte. What's the one thing that people can start doing today that would help them prepare and properly position for the potential crisis that lies ahead?
I will make this short and sweet, but if anybody wants to follow up and connect with me and have this conversation, I'd love to. I am a professional futurist. I'm a member of the association. I've studied, I've written books. I do this for a living. My position is that we are all natural futurists. Everyone in the room, everyone listening, you're all natural futurists. You got business, family, you think about your retirement or a holiday in the future. And if we think with that mindset, if we own the fact that we can influence the future, that alone will have us look at the future with a little bit more openness as opposed to anxiety. So you are all now futurists as well as being resilient, and you can now start to craft your future with intention. That's what I'd like to leave you with.
All right, thank you very much. We could put hands together. Thank you. Let's move to Dr. Richard. Over to you. What's that one thing?
I'm going to say choose courage over comfort, because there's something we're all facing right now is what is ChatGPT going to do to us? And I think Bimbo, we went to UI together. So there's something that, like he said, ChatGPT is not the one that is going to take the jobs, but the people who are going to lead it. So for all of us in the room, myself included, what are we doing with that technology? How is it going to enhance us to bring value? Because as long as we keep delivering value, we are always going to be needed.
All right, thank you very much. Your hands together again. Thank you so much for that. And then, not the least at all, we'll come back to the room, and please hang on. We'll take a quick picture shortly. But let's go to Monfik. Monfik, what's that one thing you would say to the audience they need to start doing now that would help them really prepare and position for potential future crisis?
Until I started doing the research, I realized that I had an anti-fragile mindset. But I didn't just know that I did. When you have an anti-fragile mindset, it just enables you to embrace challenges. It enables you to see setbacks as a step up to your comeback. You use failure as a springboard to your success. You use failure as, you fail forward to your success. You are able to reframe any negative situation into a positive situation. Because at the end of the day, we don't see things as they are. We see things as we are. It's how we are, our perspective, that really determines the outcome of things. So when you're consciously always working on your mindset by being proactive, being purposeful, looking at this anti-fragility as something you should imbibe, negativity, obstacles, problems, they don't deter you. They fuel you. They make you become a disruptor. They make you embrace your resilient spirit. And they make you look at things in a different way. I know you said one thing.
Thank you very much. Once again, can we put our hands together? We should look at things not as we are, but as they are. And choose courage over comfort. I'd like to thank our speakers. Thank you so much, Richard, Dr. Richard. Thank you, Charlotte, for your time. And thank you, Monfik.